Hi, welcome to the Scientistsage Sangha. I'm Nancy Anderson Dolan from Wise Heart Wellness, and I'm so glad to welcome you tonight. And our discussion is going to revolve around trance. And this is not like a hypnotic trance, although I do love to do hypnosis with people, but that'll have to wait for another night. This is to do with the trances, as Jeff Warren says, the trances we have known and loved. And the word trance comes from Latin calling transpire, transire actually. And it means like a passage out of one thing and into somewhere else rather than the ordinary place. Somewhere else we go, which is just a lovely description. But we move through trances all the time. Like when you're driving and you realize you got to work, you don't really remember how you got there, that kind of trance. And that it happens all the time. It might be cooking, or it might be cleaning the house, or walking somewhere. But all the time, we sort of lose that and we come along like this. But it seems we get this heightened focus on something and everything else sort of fades away. And that's the kind of trance that we're talking about here. And it's kind of, we lose ourselves in trance and can be kind of wonderful and interesting. But the difficulty is the brain is actually a trance generating machine. It is actually designed to do that, to design this trance that shows us what it wants us to see. And then if we think about something, the brain thinks we want something like that, so it shows us that. So it becomes this self-fulfilling trance, basically. The article that I put in this week's email was from Tara Brach, and she talked about actually awakening from the trance of unworthiness is her words. And she has a lovely story. She talked about just growing in her teen and young adult years and that sort of thing in a trance of unworthiness is what she called her particular trance. And this idea that she had some sort of personal deficiency all the time. And it was horribly difficult. She suffered a lot from having this trance, but couldn't seem to get out of it. And looking back on it after she managed to get out, she looked at the roots of those kind of societal norms, kind of trances. And we literally get them fed to us as children. Maybe our parents, like, you have to be quiet, or when you get to school, you have to have good marks, or if you're in sports, you have to be faster, stronger, better. As we go forward, we have to have good jobs and lots of money and the right spouse and do things right and in the right order of things and don't be odd and all sorts of things like that. And that changes us. It gives us this idea that our natural way of being isn't okay somehow. And that moving forward with that, we don't really realize, we might say, like I judge myself harshly or things like that, but we don't really get the extensiveness of what living in that kind of trance is like, because it permeates everything. It permeates, and we don't have to have anybody around us for these thoughts and opinions to be going on in our body, in our head. We can get up in the morning and go, oh, no, this won't do, the way I'm dressed, or, oh, my hair is bad, or all sorts of things. I should be getting up and exercising, going for a run, and then having, juiced greens or something for breakfast. And if I'm not doing that, I'm falling short somehow. And so this literally gets us into this trance we don't even know we're in. And that idea of the key delusion, I think Tara calls it, is that we are somehow separate, a separate self from everybody else. And if we were more like something or better at or whatever, then we fit in. But as long as we're in the trance, we don't really fit in, even if it's one of a trance that thinks by doing all these certain things, we're fitting in, because we don't quite feel that. So we can feel separate, even if people are accepting of us. So we get this weird separateness when we get into these trances. And that we're sort of we're impersonating ourselves. And that kind of trance is difficult because we think that is ourself. So we don't even know we're in a trance. So it can get very, very confusing. I know that before I started recovery, I had so many stories or versions of the trance that I thought it would be okay if I did that. You know, if I had this many friends, or if I just did that, or if I lived this place, or if I got a degree. And as we go along, we don't necessarily break through those things. We just try harder. And that very idea itself is this trance that we get into. Like, if I try harder, if I will, you know, if I have this uh, opinion of me out there, it's like our own marketing almost, all sorts of things like that. And right now, there's a lot of like, dream big dreams, do it, you know, that's idea that whatever we're doing isn't big enough. All sorts of things coming in like that. And it could even be in the sense of wanting to help the world. You know, I'm not doing enough to help climate change, or I should be out there lobbying, or, you know, all sorts of things come in. And what happens is we get very hypervigilant. We don't relax because there's always something we should be doing that we're not doing. Or there is this sense of, you know, I'm not okay enough. And this is really different from that really healthy, lovely urge in us to evolve and grow and that sort of thing. And move into those things that are uniquely ours, like bring our traits into the world, all that sort of idea. That moves very differently. There isn't this hypervigilance and this worry about it. There's only this growing knowing. And so we hope to get back to the growing knowing, but literally the things that we can't accept, like maybe somebody goes to school, like I went and worked on a master's for a long time, and then the school that I was enrolled at got discredited, lost their accreditation. And so I didn't get that degree. And so that kind of idea, like that was really, really hard for me to accept. And the boundary to what we can accept is that boundary to our freedom, and that freedom from the trance. So for a long time, it was like, but I came to understand it. I got a near miss, because if I had taken that and gotten that master's and registered in the Psych Association, they wouldn't let me work and do the spiritual work that I do. At the time when I was doing that, it was actually outlawed. They'd throw you out of the Psych Association. So it really was a good near miss. But at the time, I kept trying to be like that, kept trying to go towards that, and wasn't very accepting. It took a long time for that. But if we can settle down, and instead of trying to go after those theoretical problems and get those things that will make it all good on the outside in a trance life, if we settle in and accept things as they are, it doesn't mean that we don't change or we don't wish to move forward in different ways, but it comes from a different place. We settle down and we might really come to doing something like writing after 30 years of being urged towards it. Those kinds of things arise when we sit still with ourselves. And so those kinds of things, it literally is embracing the life that is with all its messiness, you know, and broken relationships and difficult things and imperfect bodies and bad hair days and whatever they are, and really distressing things, you know, like accidents and illnesses and things like that. But even in that, when people come to accept those things, they move through them with more ease. And that ease in our body makes a really big difference. And so this idea of this not getting rid of the theoretical problems, but embracing what is going on in our lives and just allowing it to be messy and broken and, you know, really alive and changing and uncertain. That's a lot of what trances are about, trying to make things certain. So this idea about just pausing when we feel a little out of sorts, or we feel like we're grasping. In Buddhism, they talk about a hungry ghost. And so, like me with my master's degree, I was like, I really wanted that because I was sure it would make things somehow right in my world. Um, and so I wanted that so much. But finally, when I stopped grasping and settled down, it was like, do I really want to go to school and spend all that money in that when I'm enjoying what I'm doing where I'm at? And then I could just settle into doing that. And it was a wonderful, wonderful path that I would have missed if I kept on the other one. So this idea of not just settling in our mind, but settling in our bodies, because this trance affects our bodies. Most often, we move into some sort of trance like that, like tomorrow will be better, because we're uncomfortable today. And so, if we can sit in our bodies and pause for a minute and just literally relax our bodies, we get a little distance from the trance. And we go, oh, what am I thinking about right now? What am I believing? What am I grasping at? And I just go, oh, wow, that's interesting. Or I might be thinking of somebody else that is something they've done or is upsetting me. I'm saying, why is that upsetting me? And literally just opening it up like that. Often we don't have to, dig like a dog for a bone. Often just opening up that lets the trance start to dissolve a little bit. And I might walk around thinking, like I'm not really an angry person at all. I have these reactions and I think I should be angry, but I'm not. Oh, interesting. I could just walk away from that. And there is someone who's talking about breaking out of the trance of anger and building a culture of peace. And he was really challenging that there's a time right now in humanity that there is this culture of like, you should be angry. And there is an idea that I have to be angry to make change in the world. And that's everybody being angry is not very likely to create a trance of peace. It just keeps a trance of anger going. And so he talks about how do we evolve out of that. And literally, one of the things is changing simple daily routines, just changing what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, getting off the treadmill trance. And whether it's like brushing your teeth with the other hand, or driving a different way to work, or trying something new, or meeting new people from, that are different from you. Those kinds of things disrupt our brain and that trance circuit. And so that we can see what's different. And setting some sort of target, like I want to be peaceful in my life, or I want to meet people this year. Interesting things like that our brain will look to do if we give it that instruction. Otherwise, we're left to the cultural instructions, which may be you should be upset about this. With all the divisive kinds of politics that are going on, we do get this sense that we should be upset. And the more divisive and outrageous they might get, we can really get drawn into being upset about that. So this idea of breaking down the trance, it's so important to think about, because in these times, it's so easy to move into a trance. As people come out of the COVID times, what happened is that there are more people that are more anxious than ever before, and they're getting triggered more easily. And so literally this new trance of anxiety that has transpired with the COVID stuff, it really is an invitation for us to go in that trance and feel threatened and too busy and overwhelmed and, not my responsibility. It's easy to be in those trances. So this idea of settling down, calming down, and just really seeing, where do I want to take my own perceptions, my own practices, my own awarenesses? Where am I going to place that awareness that I have? And just that moment of pause to see, what am I really thinking? And that opens up all sorts of new things. I have the extreme privilege of working with addicts that are newly recovering. And this is something we talk about all the time, because often addiction is a trance. And whether it's to food or alcohol or spending or any of those things, literally taking that pause and really sort of thinking, is this the path I want to go down in my life? Is this who I want to be? And I may not know how not to yet, but I can start loosening up the trance. And as that happens, there's new opportunities to be a little bit different and to set up what I might call a positive presence trance. And so it would just be being present. Oh, what's going on with me? I like it right now. Actually, in this moment, in this chair that I'm in, I'm like, I'm a little bit hot, but I shouldn't do something like take my sweater off on camera. And I can sit and listen to myself thinking crazy thoughts like that. And it's okay. And I may or may not go ahead and take my sweater off or something. Maybe we'll just undo it. But I can pay attention that there is an urge to be more alive and awake. And that's what I really encourage people to think about. And one of the exercises I would suggest throughout the week is to write down the kind of trances that you get into. And it might be something like really obvious, like a Netflix trance, where you're watching a series over and over and over. Or it might be as unusual as a routine trance. And I like my routine, and that's wonderful. Routines are great things to help us live our lives. But if I get really upset, if I'm out of my routine, then it's become a trance. A routine that I am enjoying and it's working well for me. And if something comes along, I can make an alteration for a day. Those are really useful things. But those things that grab us or we're grabbing them, they can be problematic. So I'm going to finish up with a little meditation about coming out of trance. So feel free to go off camera if you'd like, and to just put your feet up if you want, and take a couple of little deeper breaths. I'm very fond of the heart math breathing, and you simply breathe through your heart. A little slower and deeper than you would if you were just normally walking around or sitting down. And just that breath actually can shift your brain into a different level of coherence that brings you out of trances. And just to do that breathing for about 5 minutes, we're not going to go that far into just that breathing rate today, but that just breathing deeply like that, focusing on your heart, can really shift your perception. But for our purposes today, I just want you to sit into your body and notice if you are home in your body. And you might be able to tell by having my experience, like getting into my body and finding out I'm a little warm. Or you might notice because you feel something in your body, and sometimes it's not very comfortable. And trance is great to take you away from that discomfort in your body. Only it doesn't fix it. And it certainly doesn't accept. So if you have any discomfort in your body, just open up to it a bit. And this isn't like a strict Buddhist meditation. If you have an itchy nose, feel free to scratch it. We want to respond to our bodies rather than react to them by trying to push something away or dissect it, figure out why it's there. Just notice if there's anything your body wants to do. And notice if your mind is requesting you to pay attention to something else. You might have a trance line repeating in your mind. Maybe it's dinner time and you haven't eaten yet, or maybe it's like, oh, I got to go pick up the kids, or oh no, I have to finish this report for work tomorrow. Or maybe you're just tired and your body would like to have a nap. Pausing and listening, having a positive presence in your body will break up trances. And you may not even know what was causing it, what it was going on. You might just find a loosening of your shoulders. Just a settling in your body. Kind of like a coming home. And if you are getting more restless or there's streaming thoughts, just accept that too. You might be, well, that's what's going on right now. That's all. It's not good or bad. It's just what is. Stepping out of the trance of perfection and progression and performance for a few minutes. Just exploration. And in this last couple of minutes, just open up to any guidance or information about trances you might fall into that your body might want you to know. Or it might be your mind saying you should go into this kind of trance. Just notice, like listening to chatter. And just note it and note if there's any particular guidance or instructions. When I take a moment to check in throughout the day, I often get instructions like, take a glass of water, or just sit down for a minute. Or my favorite helpful thing, you have late library books. So we don't know what we'll meet coming out of trance. But I invite you to do your best to meet it with openness and simple appreciation. Okay, for the people with me live, feel free to take a moment. And for the people watching this later, thank you for tuning in. Please feel free to send any questions, comments, ideas for topics, or donations to scientistsage@gmail.com. I appreciate your presence. I am with you. You are with me. Blessed be.